Hi folks, this is your MWIS Planning Outlook with the details into the weekend and beyond. It's a very autumnal weather pattern at the moment as we move towards the equinox, the wild, wet and windy face of autumn, that is. I'm going to start with a chart though that we often use during the winter season, and that is the freezing level chart, just to set the scene on where things are, as we will see temperatures quite close to freezing point on the high tops later this week. And this is where we've been today. This is the chart as of Tuesday evening, and the freezing level in northern Scotland showing around 1600 metres. The air temperature then on the highest summits has only been around 2 or 3 degrees today. Similar as we go through the later part of the week. There is some milder air that wafts through with a frontal system through into the early hours of Wednesday, and then into Wednesday daytime those temperatures will fall once again through the day, and that freezing level is back down to around 1600 metres, so just a few hundred metres above our high tops. Into Thursday, and something very similar with that freezing level at a similar altitude, and as we head to the end of the week into Friday, similar sorts of values, 1600, 1800 metres or so is where you would find freezing point if you went up above the summits. Late Friday into the early hours of Saturday, there's the potential that that could drop even further. Some model charts make even more of it than what this one does. You can just see that tongue of colder air that sweeps across Ireland, even into Wales. That could well move in across Scotland more extensively and just put the very highest summits at or below freezing point as we go into Saturday morning. That would be temporary because the wind turns round to the southwest, and that colder air is pushed away and things become milder again into next week, and that may well be the pattern that then prevails. The temperatures in relation to the seasonal averages over the next 5 days ahead do all pretty much balance out as we get those variations between milder southwesterlies and cooler northwesterlies, and then back again as we head through the weekend, just on balance, maybe just leaning to the cooler side, especially in the west. Notice how next week, though, those colours are on the warmer side of average all the way across Britain as southwesterlies and milder air look set to dominate. The rainfall accumulation charts over 5 days ahead, and there's no surprise that it is pretty colourful, and this will be an underestimate in terms of totals that some of the mountain areas will see, but it sets the scene that it's pretty wet across western regions in particular. There is the risk of flooding then across some areas. Indications stay pretty wet heading into next week. The wettest conditions may become focused more on western Scotland, but still western hills of England and Wales still picking up on some frequent and heavy rainfall at times. Always drier the further to the east and the northeast that you go. Let's take you through the charts through these next few days, and it's a pretty textbook looking weather chart for Wednesday with a deep area of low pressure west of Scotland, a frontal system sweeping through. That is quite an active cold front in the morning over England and Wales, some intense bursts of rain, squally winds and the risk of some thunder and lightning just on that as it moves through. The strongest of the winds, it will ease and it will stay a rather blustery day, but nowhere near as severe as early in the morning across the tops in England and Wales. It will stay windy across the Highlands most of the day, and those winds likely to be touching gale force, if not often severe, across the more western coastal mountains, especially around Skye. Here, frequent bursts of rain and showers coming in, some of those heavy, again with the risk of some hail and thunder mixed in. Drier and brighter toward the Cairngorms, having had some early rain in the morning. Our area of low pressure continues to spin around later in the week with various fronts and troughs rotating around it. One feature to the west of Scotland could bring some frequent or persistent rain, some heavy bursts in there at times near to the west coast, that tending to push further inland through the day with some of the heavier bursts having the risk of hail and thunder mixed in. Eastern parts of the Highlands drier for longer, but a scattering of showers likely to spread from the west, and showery conditions pretty much from the word go near to Irish Sea coasts. Those will push inland across England and Wales with some frequent heavy bursts, again hail and thunder a possibility. Squally winds around the showers and generally windy for many places. Western coastal mountains in Scotland seeing the strongest of those winds, particularly on Skye. Those could be severe gale force over the higher Coolin for much of the day. Low pressure pulls further eastwards into Friday, but draws in a generally showery west to northwesterly airflow across all areas. So showers pretty much for all, maybe from the word go in some places. Locally you could be drier for a time, but basically it is a day of some bursts of rain on and off, and again some of those heavier bursts that are around locally with a risk of hail and thunder. Some uncertainty on the peak strength of the winds looks to be focused around more western regions and possibly even across Wales, where wind speeds could touch gale force on the tops. Maybe a lull for a time across central eastern Scotland, but do be prepared for a significant wind chill in that cool air coming around from the northwest. A window of opportunity into Saturday as higher pressure is temporarily on the scene. It could be a rather chilly wind across northern regions early in the day, and 1 or 2 showers possible, and these could just fall as some sleet or some snow temporarily on the highest Munros in northern Scotland. Mostly dry and bright for many, but we're watching the timing of fronts coming back in from the Atlantic, where some further rain and strengthening winds are likely to move in. Soonest into Wales, that could be arriving even into the afternoon. Southwesterly winds are back on Sunday with various fronts coming in. There's uncertainty of this. There may be 2 sort of different features running in from the southwest. Basically the risk of some rain, some drizzle and some low cloud coming back in, focused across western hills. Better conditions toward the east and the northeast, but the risk of some brisk or even gale force winds across higher terrain once more. Much like the current time, one of these weather systems into early next week could well have the remnants of a tropical storm in the mix, just adding a bit more moisture and energy to the system and bringing that ever-present risk of some heavy rain and strong winds, all pretty typical for this sort of pattern at this time of the year. It stays unsettled then for a few days. Wettest conditions could well be focused on western Scotland compared to presently, with drier conditions maybe starting to develop further south, as this model starts to hint at higher pressure building over England and Wales. Now, I'd be a bit cautious of being too optimistic too soon, but there just seems to be that hint that next week's weather systems are a bit further north and with time not quite as active. Looking at those general pattern trends then, that is this week ahead and indicates that we're very much dominated by a strong zone of lower than average pressure, keeping things unsettled. That does improve next week for the 7 days through until the 2nd of October. The hint then of higher pressure being focused toward the south of us, shown here by the orange colours and also the shape of the contours. That's the sort of waving, meandering pattern of the upper atmospheric pressure patterns. The jet stream then, in this instance, is just steering a bit further towards the north as we go through next week, but we're always just on the edge of those Atlantic systems still coming in, which does just bring that risk, especially in western Scotland, of seeing rain at times. The scope for being drier though, as mentioned, further south. Southwesterly weather patterns look to prevail into early October, with low pressure toward the northwest still, high pressure toward the south, so staying changeable across Scotland, with rain still quite frequent probably over west and northern regions, with weather systems just passing through over the North Atlantic. High pressure further south, keeping things drier more often, and the general fetch of the air coming in from the southwest would indicate that things would be on the milder side for that time. So often mild, rarely anything particularly chilly over the next couple of weeks ahead. It gets very sketchy trying to put together the patterns any further ahead really, but there's just the suggestion of subtle changes into mid-month, maybe in terms of temperatures really. Areas of high pressure just reposition themselves. The pressure pattern over Britain suggested to be around average, so neither a signal for being particularly high or low, so changeable, mixed conditions perhaps the best description, but just the scope to turn that airflow a bit more toward the northwest, with the circulation patterns just favouring that type of flow. So it could become a bit cooler, could be a bit chillier heading towards the middle of October. Plenty to watch then. Keep an eye on this Saturday for being one of the better days in the short term. I'll leave you with that for today. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.